This is Freddy Veggie, your host, a special kind of vegetable. And tonight I'm here for you to talk a little bit about equalizers. So, last time we have had the pleasure of talking about the philosophy of equalization. And this time we're gonna talk about the actual tools that we're gonna use, and that is software or hardware equalizers. And as this is an introduction to the people who are not yet completely involved in the audio world, just starting out, especially didgeridoo players, hello, fellow brethren, I'm going to talk about three basic kinds of equalizers today. And these three kinds are the tilt equalizer, the graphic equalizer, and the parametric equalizer. And I've also prepared a little bit, as you can see here, so we can actually listen to what they're doing. So we're going to be toying around with the tilt EQ and graphic equalizer later on. But first things first, I want to talk about the tilt equalizer. So what is a tilt equalizer? Tilting in that instance is tilting the frequency spectrum a little bit, and I'm not sure where historically this idea has evolved, but I have seen it with actual hardware preamps from Tonelux, and they have a tilt control next to their gain knob, which is quite handy if you think about it. If you have a recording which sounds a little bit dull and dark, then just by turning a single knob, you can make it more lively and bright. Or the other way around. If you think that it's too bright and brittle, then by turning a single knob, you can just shift the whole frequency spectrum more on the bassy side. So this is actually quite a handy tool, and with very broad strokes, but just a single control, you can change the balance between the high frequencies and the lower frequencies. And well, you're always emphasizing one part and attenuating the other, but by the change of balance, you're changing the musical character. Now, our software equalizer that we're going to be using today also offers the possibility to control the center point of where the tilt is taking actual place. I believe, I'm not sure, but I believe that in the original hardware unit, the center frequency was around about 500 hertz. So by tilting the frequency spectrum towards the base, you were emphasizing anything beneath 500 hertz and attenuating above, and vice versa. But today, with this software equalizer, we also have the possibility to change that. So we're going to see how that sounds and what we can achieve with that. So let's use this thing and see where we can go. As you can see, there's very simple controls. In our case, it's just a way to determine the center point where the tilting is taking place, and you can see the chosen center point down here. Then there's a control to have it lean on the high side or the low side, so if I'm going to the right, it's gonna get brighter, like listen. And an output gain to counteract any gain that I might add by the equalization. So up here you can see the level coming in, the maximum level, and this is the RMS level, and here's the peak level going out. So at the moment it's balanced. If I'm making this brighter, you can see I just added a little bit of level. so we can counteract that. And at the same time I can also emphasize the lower frequencies. And here, if I'm going to the extreme settings, I'm always gonna see a gain increase, so I might want to counteract that. So we can A/B this quickly just by turning it off and on again. Yeah, that sounds horrible, doesn't it? But a little goes a long way. So to my ears, at the moment, this sounds a little bit too dull and dark. So let's see if we can just brighten it up a little bit. I made it more quiet, but that's not too bad. Or isn't it? Yeah, it's getting better. But the problem is we're losing a little bit of bass here. So maybe not as extreme. Let's cut that back a little bit. Check the output level. And that's fine. Off. So you can immediately see and hear the drawback of the tilt EQ. It's very easy to control, but when you're brightening something up, you're also attenuating the lower frequencies, which means in our case, we're losing a little bit of body, and actually with the didgeridoo, I want to have that body being present, and I want to have that low energy, and by tilting the balance upwards, I'm losing that lower energy. But we need more of the higher frequency content. So even changing the center point isn't gonna change that, but for shits and giggles, I'm just gonna do that now so you can hear what it's doing. So let me reset that and that. Go ahead. So obviously, if I'm using a lower frequency and tilt upwards, yeah, it's not doing much, isn't it? Here again, if you're going to some extremes, you're essentially, right now I'm essentially tilting the whole frequency spectrum beneath 3000 hertz, beneath 3 kilohertz, which is quite high. So all the important mid-range and lower frequency content can be tilted by this single knob here. Increased here and decreased there. So maybe what we can do is we can use a Reaper feature. So now essentially I have all the higher frequency information, the one that I need and want. And I'm emphasizing this strongly, and now I'm gonna reduce the wet level and bring back a little bit of the original signal. Let's see how it sounded to begin with. That works actually. So We can make this work, but only if we're using Reaper's capability to do parallel processing. That is, take the original sound and essentially create a copy, work on the copy, and then decide how much of the copy we want to mix back with the original sound. And by going to extremer settings, by tilting the whole frequency spectrum above all normal human content, and mixing it back, we could make this work. If all that you have is a little dull recording, maybe a tilt equalizer is all you need. And just a little bit more high frequency content mixed in will give you better balance. And if a simple tool will help you out, why would you grab for, the thing with 1,000 knobs to control? It's just gonna make your life harder. So yeah, that was the tilt equalizer. And we can go on to the graphic equalizer. So, the graphic equalizer, to those people who are old enough to have had a hi-fi stereo system back at home, you maybe had a section with a 5-band graphic equalizer or maybe even a 7-band equalizer. It's that very basic idea, and in live applications there's even 31-band equalizers, which seems a little bit absurd, but we're going to see soon that maybe more bands isn't such an outrageous idea. The nice thing about the graphic equalizer is that essentially you have, if you look at them, you have the frequency response graph right in front of you. If you're pushing bass area, then you will immediately see that. So let me bring up this guy here. As you can see, I've already toyed around a little bit with this. So let's just see which sort of sound I achieved with that. So this is with it alone. And off. So you can see we have a little problem here. We have more gain with the equalizer in, and I don't have a quick way to actually remove this. Yeah. So you can achieve a usable result by using graphic equalizer. This one is essentially turned by 90 degrees. So the ones that you might know would have the sliders going up or down instead of left and right. And here you can see essentially the frequency response graph. If you imagine this one tilted, pun intended, then you might see that the lower frequencies are boosted. I've cut a little bit of the middle and boosted quite a lot of the highs. Well, if it's so easy to use, why not use this one right away? Well, there's multiple problems with this one actually. First of all, this is a 7-band graphic equalizer. 7 bands aren't so few after all, but they're not enough to express what I want to do with the sound. I might want to change a smaller portion of the sound than these 7 bands offer me. I mean, I have a knob here which is labeled 100 Hertz, 200, 400 Hertz. If I'm toying around with the 200 Hertz, essentially all the area between 100 and 400 Hertz is going to be affected by this, and we're going to look at that in just a moment. So that's one problem. I can change the 200 Hertz here. That's another problem. There's so much value in getting these frequencies right, and you can't have a 7-band graphic equalizer that's going to be right for every instrument out there. for voice, for singing, for percussive didgeridoo, for droning didgeridoo, for air code, for earth code, and so on. So maybe a 31 band graphic equalizer isn't such a bad idea after all. But now we're talking about turning 31 knobs and essentially getting every one of them right. Now, is this really easier than using a parametric equalizer, which we will explore later on? I'm not so sure. So, if the tilt equalizer was the single knob which gives a very broad brush to paint your frequency balance with, then this is still quite a broad brush and maybe not what we need. And I'm actually convinced that the parametric equalizer is the tool of choice for essentially any mixing application. In a live situation, I can see where just, turning a few knobs on a graphic equalizer and pushing up and down a few sliders might solve a problem or get the sound that you're looking for. Especially if time is very limited and you suddenly have a problem, you have resonance somewhere and you have a sound that you don't like, and you can just use one slider and pull it up or down and things are going to be way better for you. Well, go for it. I also believe that the main use for graphic equalizers nowadays is actually in a live situation. So you have them in your rack, some DBX or Clark Technic one, for instance, the 31 band equalizers, and you can essentially hone in on the frequency that is giving you problems and cut it, or you might be in a room where some frequencies don't cut through so good, so you're going to boost them. And it's very easy to fumble around with this, even while being on stage, while performing, if you're doing the kind of gigs that you have to do a PA as well. So, graphic equalizers certainly have their right to exist and a good place where we can use them, but maybe it's not in a mixing situation. So everything points to the parametric equalizer. Okay, so let's talk about the parametric equalizer. Actually, we were looking at a parametric equalizer early on already, and this is the one that I used to actually equalize the track. The problem with the parametric equalizer is that it's very complicated, and I'm going to talk about it in another episode. So yeah, I hope you're looking forward to that coming up. But before we're ending on such a low note here, I want to show you something, and that is a funny tool called Plugin Doctor. And what you can use this for is you can load plugins and compare them, and you might just see Rear.js here, but the ones that I loaded are actually the tilt equalizer and the 7-band EQ. And I want to show you another problem with the graphic equalizer that is not obvious at first. So you see these lines here, like this is a boost of 2.5 decibels, this is a cut of 2.5 decibels. If I'm taking the 100 hertz here, and let's say I'm boosting by 2.5. So you can see at 100 hertz, fine, we have a boost of 2.5 decibels. But look at how wide that curve is. It's meeting the 200 hertz, which is the next control over here. And it's extending down to essentially close to 10 hertz. So this thing is affecting more than 2 octaves up and down. And if you think about it in a musical term, if you're looking at piano keys in front of you, this is like more than 4 hands full of keys, which is affected by this single knob. And now let me take the neighboring control and also boost that by 2.5. And now something unexpected is going to happen. These things add up. So what you have here is essentially a 4 decibel boost right in between those two. So instead of having like a curve like this, where at 100 hertz you're having a boost, and at 200 hertz you're having a boost, all this area in between is also boosted. And the curve even got wider. I mean, this thing is affecting like over 1,000 hertz now, which is like 2 controls over. So this might be something that you're not expecting, and you're affecting a lot of frequency content that you maybe don't want to affect. So, yeah. And for those of you who were wondering how the tilt EQ is changing the frequency response, keep in mind this is a center frequency of 640. Maybe we're going to make this easier to look at by aiming for 500 or so, which is not so easy to enter. Let's see. Close. Okay, so if we're tilting that upwards, we're cutting a lot of bass. By tilting it downward, we're cutting a lot of the highs and boosting the lows. And that's why this thing also has an output gain control, so we can counteract that. So if that sort of curve is all you need, well then go grab a tilt equalizer. I think with that in mind, we can end episode 3 of 1047 trivial steps to get a great didgeridoo sound. My name is Veggie Veggie. I'm a special sort of vegetable, and I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Next episode, we're going to talk about parametric equalizers and finally get to use this thing on a track. I hope to see you then.